The writers of Batman the Animated Series get high praise for their work creating stories about sympathetic, tragic supervillains for Batman to battle. These villains are often motivated by their own pain and suffering, but then there's a small subset of villains that were motivated by greed. These characters rarely had superpowers, instead they used their wealth and influence to make Gotham City a worse place. Just look at the Forgotten's Boss Biggis, an obese, gluttonous man that takes everything for himself, giving the absolute minimum to his workers. Homeless people that he had kidnapped from the streets of Gotham. If there's ever an overt personification of capitalism, I'd argue it's Boss Biggis. However, there's one Gotham City industrialist who, I think, is the absolute worst of the worst. There's nothing that would stop this man from pursuing the almighty dollar, regardless of the cost in human lives, and that man is Roland Daggett. Now, before anyone starts getting mad accusing me of being a hardcore socialist, I think what you actually mean is that I'm European, the writers on BTAS clearly held the upper classes in contempt. Just look at villains like Derek Powers or Lex Luthor, the titans of industry that were evil to their core. You could argue that the writers were critical of extreme capitalism or industrialism, sure, that's not wrong, but the wealthy elites of Gotham City were not free from scorn either. They were presented as morons, falling for obvious schemes like Nostromo's psychic protection racket scam in Prophecy of Doom, or the Mad Hatter's mind control dolls in The Worry Men. Vapid, clueless simpletons. And then we have the chinless wonder, Mr. Piers Chapman, who in the episode Birds of a Feather mocked the Penguin because of his appearance and wound up being taught a lesson in humility by the fine-feathered Fink. Even Bruce Wayne can't escape their criticism. While he is kind and attempts to use his wealth for the betterment of Gotham City, he does have some serious flaws. For instance, by buying Competitron from Daniel Mockridge, another skeezy millionaire whose greed led to the creation of a supervillain, Bruce Wayne states that he's buying the company to move it to Gotham, and the high-paying jobs along with them. Now that's great for the people of Gotham, but what about the current employees? He's taking the jobs from somewhere else and moving them to Gotham, essentially shuffling the poverty around. And don't get me started on Bruce's dream sequence from The Forgotten. That's a dead-end right-wing talking point about how handouts don't solve anything. Okay, yeah, sure, it won't fix the problems that cause poverty, but it will definitely help. Certainly more than doing nothing. But I digress. With all that said, Roland Daggett is another in a long line of greedy industrialists that contribute to the misery of Gotham City and create supervillains. And I would argue that he is the worst of the worst, utterly contemptible without a single redeeming quality. Daggett is an original creation for Batman the Animated Series, making his first appearance in the episode Feet of Clay Part 1. The episode opens with the facially malleable Matt Hagen impersonating Bruce Wayne at the orders of Daggett. Wayne Enterprise executive Lucius Fox is tricked into bringing all the evidence he has of Daggett's insider trading to Hagen. Daggett's master plan is to perform a hostile takeover of Wayne Enterprises to gain access to their marketing channels to sell his dangerous new product Renew You, a face cream that can be used to smooth away blemishes and improve people's appearance. This is the same chemical that Hagen uses to temporarily repair his disfigured face and is chronically addicted to. The only way he can get his fix is if he does as Daggett orders. It's implied that Hagen has been in Daggett's employ for years, impersonating people for Daggett's benefit. When Hagen and Daggett's weirdly neurotic henchman Bell, Germs, and this other strange-looking guy who never gets named are interrupted by Batman, Daggett orders his men to tie up loose ends by killing Hagen. After all, you can't trust an addict to keep a secret. Daggett presents himself as a firm, strong man, but he never dirties his own hands. There's always a level of plausible deniability with him. His lawyers would always argue that he had no knowledge of what his henchmen were doing. Daggett's relationship with Hagen is another great indicator of his character. After a terrible accident left Hagen with horrific injuries, he was taken to one of Daggett's clinics for specialist treatment. As well as manufacturing chemicals and running a resort in Yucca Springs, as seen in The Strange Secret of Bruce Wayne, Daggett clearly has his fingers in the healthcare system. He profits from other people's pain and misery. As an Englishman, where we have socialised healthcare that is essentially free at the point of use, I find this point particularly disgusting. Note that in comparison, Bruce Wayne funds free clinics for Gotham's impoverished citizens. Daggett, meanwhile, doesn't help people out of a sense of altruism. He provides Hagen with a means of temporarily restoring his face, not because he feels a profound need to help Hagen, it's a transaction. In exchange for allowing Hagen to continue living his life the way he had been, he must do jobs for Daggett. Impersonate people, gather up evidence of Daggett's wrongdoing, destroy it, and presumably kill those that know the truth. We know this because that's exactly what Daggett had wanted Hagen to do to Lucius Fox before Batman intervened. This failure to kill Fox and gather the evidence against Daggett led him to ordering Hagen's death. Of course, his henchmen Bell and Germs are cruel, neurotic fools that can't really follow instructions. Rather than simply shooting Hagen, they instead choose to torment him by smothering him in the Renew You formula and leave his melting body in his car behind Daggett's factory. I've done a whole video about what motivates these characters in this episode, so go check that out if you haven't seen it already. But essentially, these people act cruelly in an attempt to feel powerful. All of this stems from Daggett as a leader. He is a weak, small man that desperately wants to be a big shot, but doesn't have the patience or the skill to do it through honest means. As well as Bell and Germ's actions being cruel, it was a stupid plan. They left his body in the car behind Daggett's building. Even if his body melted away to nothing, that's still Matt Hagen's car. It would be pretty obvious where he went and who was responsible for his disappearance. Hagen was a high-profile citizen, and his disappearance isn't something that would be easily swept under the rug. This suggests to me that, out of all of Gotham's nefarious businessmen, Daggett is probably the least discerning when it comes to hiring henchmen. His goons are massively incompetent, and it's a wonder that he gets anything done. Later on, when confronted by Clayface, Daggett becomes a simpering little coward, drenched in sweat when faced with the consequences of his actions. He can't even get the words out to defend his actions, or claim innocence. He comes face to face with the consequences of his actions, and he crumbles. Daggett's character is even more fleshed out in the episode Appointment in Crime Alley. Early in the episode there is a news report about how Daggett has been buying up run-down properties in Park Row, an area of Gotham colloquially known as Crime Alley, the place where Bruce Wayne's parents were murdered incidentally, and how Daggett is trying to evict all of the tenants to demolish the area and build condos. During the report we see Batman exercising, clearly as a way of working through his frustrations. Batman hits the punching bag while Daggett's on screen, which is a not at all subtle message about what he'd like to do to Daggett. When Daggett is unsuccessful in legally evicting his tenants, he resorts to criminality, first by sending his men to the residents' homes to assault them. Meanwhile, Daggett's other henchmen, Crocker and Nitro, plant explosives in the buildings with the aim of destroying the neighbourhood, even though the residents are still inside. This massive loss of life is of little concern to Daggett. Daggett makes a point of dehumanising the residents of Park Row using the term "these people," which carries racist undertones. Note that many of the residents of Park Row are not of white Anglo-Saxon heritage, and Daggett paints them as enemies of progress in his speech to the Gotham Better Business Council. Daggett's speech equates heartlessness and greed with progress and strength, when in reality it's quite the opposite. It's very easy to be cruel to people and to demonise those that are different. It takes effort to really solve problems, as we see from Batman's actions, which take place concurrently with Daggett's speech. While Daggett fluffs up the egos of the room of like-minded industrialists, Batman is the one showing real strength on the streets, preventing a tram from crashing and disarming Daggett's explosives. While Batman is able to prevent the inhabited buildings from being destroyed, some of the condemned buildings are blown up. When Daggett arrives on the scene, he immediately gives a statement to the press.
It's a sad fact, but you have to expect violence in Crime Alley. These people don't value human life like we do.
There he is again, attempting to sow the seeds of division. It's the people of Park Row's fault, he claims. They don't share our values. It's us versus them. This is a common tactic used by the elites, pitting us against each other, blaming one group, often an ethnic minority, for society's woes, when the reality is far more complex. We working people have more in common with each other than we do the supposed elites, and they know it. While Batman caught Daggett's henchmen in the act and they confess that they were acting on Daggett's orders in front of the press, Daggett is able to walk away because of his position in society. If he was someone of a lower socio-economic class, there's no way the police wouldn't have restrained him while the incident was investigated. But because of who he is, he can just hop in his limo and drive away. And that last shot of Daggett smirking before the driver closes the passenger door and drives away is really indicative of the theme of the episode. Once the door closes, all we can see is the reflection of Gotham burning in the background as Batman gnashes his teeth in anger at the injustice of it all. Roland Daggett gets some comeuppance in his next appearance, Cat Scratch Fever. The episode revolves around Catwoman trying to find her beloved cat Isis after she went missing. Isis had been rounded up by Daggett's henchmen and taken to a lab where they tested a man-made virus on stray animals. Daggett's plan was to infect the animals and then release them in Gotham, causing an outbreak of the virus. He would then sell the people a cure. Not only would this make him rich, but it would also do wonders for his reputation. And this is a core part of Daggett's character. He uses his power and influence to create things that aren't needed. gaudy condos, cures to artificial viruses, and deceptive, addictive cosmetic products. Rather than putting in the work to build his company up, he'd rather cheat and steal. Rather than buying vacant land and building properties there, he'd rather buy up cheap slums, demolish them, and then inflate the value of the land, with no care for the people already living there. Rather than making a useful product that would help people, he creates problems for people and sells them the solution. Catwoman and Batman would team up to expose Daggett and his comically bad stooges, Jesse Paunch and Professor Milo, again demonstrating what a poor judge of character he is. It's like he just hires the first people that walk through the doors. However, this scandal acts as little more than a setback for Daggett. In Batgirl Returns, we learned that the legal costs of his man-made virus had essentially bankrupted him, but he had a plan to bounce back. As a way of getting some quick funds, he resorted to stealing a jade cat statue with the hopes that the cat theme of the theft would shift the blame to Catwoman. What he didn't count on was Catwoman deciding to prove her innocence by teaming up with Batgirl. And I really adore the visuals of the interrogation scene in the Stack Deck bar, with the strong overhead lighting. Catwoman and Batgirl interrogate the chemist, a chemical expert that looks suspiciously like Captain Marvel foe Dr. Savannah, asking him to identify the corrosive chemical used in the robbery. The chemist's reaction to identifying it tells Catwoman all she needs to know. When Batgirl and Catwoman find the statue at Daggett's factory, a rare example of references to the series continuity, this is where Matt Hagen was assaulted and turned into Clayface, Daggett is exposed. While he acts like a menacing tough guy, he's actually pretty ineffective and tries to run at the first sign of adversity. Even when Catwoman catches up with him and he tries to defend himself by swinging a metal bar at her, she easily dodges his blow, making him stumble down the catwalk and tip over the edge, almost falling into a vat of chemicals. What a buffoon. After this, we don't see Daggett again in the shows, but he does make a brief appearance in Gotham Adventures, the tie-in comic book. In issue 51, Daggett orchestrates a team-up between Clayface and Mr. Freeze in an effort to perfect a regenerative formula based on Renew You and regain his fortune. When Clayface learns who set this up, he flies into a rage, revealing himself to Mr. Freeze, who does not appreciate the deception. Outside of the DCAU, Daggett hasn't really been used. A character named John Daggett appears in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises, with similar aims to Roland Daggett, to seize control of Wayne Enterprises. I'm certain the Daggett name isn't a coincidence, but I don't really know why they named him John. Maybe the Nolans just don't like the name Roland. While Daggett hasn't technically appeared in the mainline Batman comics, his influence could definitely be felt. In Detective Comics Annual 1 from the Rebirth era, Daggett's company features prominently in the new origin for Clayface. Movie makeup expert Vincent Carlo had been responsible for some of Hollywood's greatest monster makeup, but he had a secret. He had been adding an industrial chemical produced by Daggett Chemicals called Renew, which was intended to be used in the construction industry to make steel malleable. By applying a small amount of the makeup, he could then sculpt his own flesh, creating some truly horrific visages. Vincent disclosed his secret to his young son Basil, explaining that his creations were an expression of his true self, and that showing the horrors within him led to him being ostracized. Years later, when Basil was an up-and-coming actor on the brink of breaking through with a big role, he suffered a disfiguring accident after he learned that his father had died. Remembering his father's secret technique, Basil resculpted his own face using the chemical. However, by this point, Renew had been discontinued after the steel workers that had used it suffered from some serious side effects. Basil believed that he needed the chemical in order to be successful, clearly suffering from addiction and erratic mood swings as a side effect. So he started breaking into Daggett's warehouses, looking for old stockpiles of the chemical. This would capture the attention of Batman, who easily defeated Carlo. Without access to the chemical, his secret was exposed to the world. Batman encouraged Carlo to testify to the harmful nature of Daggett's chemicals to District Attorney Harvey Dent, but instead of testifying, Carlo made one final attempt at stealing the chemicals. While Daggett is never seen, 2 security guards state that Daggett has offered a reward for anyone that silences Carlo, and so they open fire on him, cracking open the canisters of the formula, bathing Carlo in it, transforming him into the monstrous Clayface. I think that Roland Daggett, whichever version of him we see, is a great reminder that you don't need superpowers to be a real villain. While there aren't any shape-shifting mud monsters in the real world, it's depressing to think about how many people out there are just like Roland Daggett. Daggett is a heartless liar who thinks that his wealth means he can do whatever he wants, hurt whoever he wants in the name of progress. Whose progress exactly? And profit off of other people's misery. In my books, this makes him one of the most utterly detestable characters in the entire DC animated universe. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. Next time, I'm going to continue my look at the villains from Superman the Animated Series. I'm going to shine the spotlight on the very first villain to appear in that show, the supercomputer Brainiac, and how he exemplified the writer's mantra of taking established characters, scrapping everything that didn't fit to create a brand new take on a classic comic book supervillain. Hope to see you then.